Live, and we are live and on the air. And Ahmed Dyer, and this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. At the moment, only got one minion, a very tired minion, joining me, Patrick from down in Houston. Thought we might have another guest joining us, and maybe she will at some point. In any event, need to get this show started. The show must go on. Okay. And the first story I want to talk about, it is a milestone in solar cell efficiency, up to 34.5%. And I want to do the old screen share here so you don't be looking at. Wait a minute. No. I almost hit the wrong button. And here we go. Okay. We got graphs. We got charts. We got colored stuff. We got yellow, red, and greens and blues. I got no clue what it means. But what it means is they've come up with a system. This is the University of New South Wales, edged closer to the theoretical limits of sunlight to electricity conversion by photovoltaic cells, set a new efficiency record of 34.5%. And this is Mark Keevers and Martin Green of the University of New South Wales Australian Centre for Advanced Photovoltaics. And they used something called a 28 centimeter 4-junction mini model. It was embedded in a prism that extracts the maximum energy from the sun. It does this by splitting the incoming rays into 4 bands using a hybrid 4-junction receiver to squeeze even more electricity from each beam of sunlight. The new results, which were confirmed by the U.S. National Renewable Energy Lab, is, they say, 44% better than the previous record. Let's see, skipping ahead a little bit. They achieved an electronic conversion rate over 40% by using mirrors to concentrate the light, concentrator photovoltaics, then similarly splitting out various wavelengths. The new results, however, was achieved.
Welcome to VoiceOver. VoiceOver speaks descriptions of items on the screen.
What?
It can be used to control.
VoiceOver?
Sorry.
Sorry, guys. We've been waiting here 2 hours. We're getting a little tired. It's okay. All right. Where was I? The new results, however, is achieved using, let's see, got to back up a bit, achieving an electronic conversion rate over 40% by using mirrors to concentrate the light. I said that. What's remarkable about this level of efficiency had not been expected for many years. Recent study by Germany's Agros Energiewada think tank. What do they know? An aggressive target of 35% by 2050 for a module that uses unconcentrated sunlight was their expectation. The record-setting mini module combines a silicon cell on one face of a glass prism with a triple junction solar cell on the other. The triple junction solar cells, discrete bands of the incoming sunlight using a combination of 3 layers: indium gluon phosphide and indium gluon arsenide and germanium. As sunlight passes through each layer, energy is extracted by each junction at its most efficient wavelength, while the unused part of the light passes through the next layer, and so on. Some of the infrared band of incoming sunlight used by this triple junction cell is filtered out, bounced onto the solar cell, thereby extracting just about all of the energy from each beam of light that hits the mini module. So, hooray for advances in solar technology efficiency. And you had at least one think tank that didn't think you would see this kind of efficiency for maybe another 20 years or so. It shows you that the pace of solar energy cells is increasing. We may not be all that far from reaching that magic battery that will kind of revolutionize the whole industry. We can get away from using gas-driven engines. We can go to a situation, everybody has those kinds of efficient solar cells hooked up to their home. Everybody goes off the grid, and energy won't be a problem. I'm going to say 10 to 15 years, hopefully I'll live that long, energy will be no problem as far as we'll be able to get all the energy that we need, probably at not much more than what we're paying now. So 2 thumbs up for progress. More progress. In this case, it's the Chesapeake Bay, and the Chesapeake Bay health has been improving. And a little picture, the continued improvements of bay health, and I guess we can make that a little bit larger. All right. The overall health of Chesapeake Bay improved. Oh, we've got to report this. Mike said Patrick is cool. There you go, Patrick. Cool, Patrick. The overall health of Chesapeake Bay improved. And I should back up and say, we've got Mike Jobin and Roxy in the chat room. Thank you guys, for hanging around. All right, back to the story. The overall health of Chesapeake Bay improved in 2015, according to these scientists. University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, the largest estuary in the nation, scored 53% in terms of health in 2015, and that's one of the 3 highest scores since 1986. 53% really in itself doesn't sound all that great. Anyway, only in 1992 and 2002 scored as high or higher. And the interesting thing is, both of these years, you had major sustained droughts. We expect to see improvements after a drought year because nutrients aren't being washed into the bay, fueling algae blooms and poor water quality. Bill Dennison, Vice President of Science Applications at the University of Maryland for Environmental Studies. However, in 2015, stream flow was below normal, but nowhere near the drought conditions in 1992 or 2002. Thus, the high score for 2015 indicates we're making progress, reducing what's coming off the land. The overall score, Chesapeake Bay Health, 2015 was 53%. In 2014, 50%. And 2013, it was 45%. Strong improvements in many regions throughout the Bay. There were no regions that had lower scores in 2015 compared to 2014. Improvements can be related to several factors, including several years of moderated weather, sewage treatment upgrades, and use of winter wheat cover crops by farmers and reduction in atmospheric nitrogen deposits. So this kind of progress, I would expect, hopefully, can continue whether or not we have drought conditions. We know why the bay became degraded, and what we need to do is to restore it. This report card shows what's possible when we take action, and that's what you need. There's a lot of restoration projects going out across the country. Not Hudson Bay, the Hudson River, New York, for instance, as an example. And it takes local community activists, local community leaders, politicians. We all get together, and we can really make a dramatic change. Total nitrogen levels continue to improve throughout the bay, corresponding to reductions in nitrogen entering the bay measured at monitoring stations. Dissolved oxygen, the amount of oxygen available in the water for the bay's creatures to survive, remained steady, with the benthic index of biotic integrity, what's happening to life at the bottom of the bay, also showed improvement. And one indicator that declined, total phosphorus, which had a lower score from the previous year. The fisheries index, an average of all three fish species, is variable over time. It increased from 67% in 2014 to 73% 2015, a moderately good score, but striped bass held steady at 98%. Blue crab, 47%, and the bay anchovies, 73%. So you're seeing here proof of what can be done once the local community leaders and politicians, once we get our act together. It's regional. Some parts of the country doing worse, other parts of the country doing better. I believe there have been continued algae bloom problems in the Gulf of Mexico. But once we get enough people behind conservation programs like this kind of program shows it will work. Okay, on to the next story. Another really, really cool study from Harvard. If you want to find out some really interesting scientific progress, just go to the Harvard University's online site. Just about every week, they've got some kind of new advance in technology. In this case, we have what Harvard is calling the Robo Bees. We even got a little YouTube video I can play. I don't think you can hear it, but you don't really need to hear it. You can actually see them. So I'll show this video, play the video, while I'm reading from the news story. There's your little robot critters. They're drones, right? This drone is attached to something, but I believe they can also be autonomous. I'm not sure about that, however. In a recent article in Science, Harvard roboticists demonstrated that their flying micro robots, named the Robo Bees, can now perch during flight to save energies, just like bats, birds, or butterflies. Many applications for small drones require them to stay in the air for extended periods. And this is Mortiz Gruole, Mortitzgarule, at Harvard's John Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, also working with the Weiss Institute of Biologically Inspired Engineering, also at Harvard University. Unfortunately, smaller drones run out of energy quickly. We want to keep them aloft longer without requiring too much additional energy. And so the team turned to electrostatic adhesion, the same basic science that causes a static charged sock to cling to a pants leg or a balloon to stick to the wall. You rub a balloon on a wool sweater, the balloon becomes negatively charged. The charged battery is brought close to a wall. That negatively charged forces some of the wall's electrons away, leaving the surface positively charged. Bang, the balloon is attached to the wall. In the case of the balloon, however, the charge goes down over time, and the balloon will eventually fall down. In our system, a small amount of energy is constantly applied to maintain the attraction. The Robo Bee, pioneered at Harvard Microrobotics Lab, it uses an electrode patch. I don't know if there was a picture of that. No, there wasn't. Okay. Let's see. Going back. Yeah, they use an electrode patch and a foam mount that absorbs shock. The entire mechanism weighs 13.4 milligrams, bringing the total weight of the robot to about 100 milligrams, similar to the weight of a real bee. Robot takes off and flies normally. When the electrode patch is supplied with a charge, it can stick to almost any surface, from glass to wood to a leaf. To detach, the power supply is switched off. And that would be a limitation at this point, in that the robot, the little bee robot, it has to be attached to an energy source. So they've got to make that more autonomous. The patch requires about 1,000 times less energy to perch than it does to hover, offering to dramatically extend the operational life of the robot. Reducing the robot's power requirements is critical for this research as they work to integrate onboard batteries in an untethered robot bee. And that's what we need, an untethered robot bee. I think the primary application is something like search and rescue work. You're not going to see any little robot bees pollinating plants anytime soon. But this could be really useful for getting into really tight quarters, getting pictures, perhaps to see if anybody's still alive or something like that. So I think it's primarily, I guess you could use it for other types of research as well. Okay, let's move on. Story number 4 in the lineup. This is a neat one. Climate change. Okay, you got climate change, warming, the Arctic, and the polar bears. It means they don't have the ice flows. They can't sneak up on the seals and things on the ice anymore. So it's not an environment where they can maintain their population. So they're migrating. They're migrating south, and they're coming in contact with grizzly bears. What happens? The bears are close enough so that they can mate and produce young. They're calling it a Prizzly Bear. All right, let me screen share again. Wait a minute here. Do I have the right? Does the old man have the right story? He does not. Okay, hold on. Oh, wait a second. Come on. Ah, here we go. Now, unfortunately, as you can see, they had to shoot it and kill it before they could examine it and find that it's a hybrid. hopefully they'll be able to, I don't know, find a way of doing this without killing the bear. Okay. This is from The Guardian, I believe. Yes. The British Guardian, British newspaper, The Guardian. Climate change is known for swelling the oceans and fueling extreme weather, but it may also causing the curious emergence of a new type of bear in the Arctic. A bear shot in the frigid expanse of northern Canada is believed to be a grizzly polar bear hybrid, a consequence of the increasing interactions between the two bear species. The hunter's name is Digi Ishuluk. Originally thought he'd shot a small polar bear, but then closer observation, it was a half-breed. And other bee experts supported that contention. It was shot near a small community in Aravat, located on Hudson Bay. It looks like a polar bear, but it's got brown paws and big claws like a grizzly, and the shape of a grizzly head. Sightings of this hybrid species, and some people call it the growler bear or a Prizzly Bear, have become more common in recent years as the Arctic has warmed at twice the rate of the global average. Grizzly bears found in Alaska and Canada appear to be moving north as their environment warms, bringing them into moving north? Oh, the grizzly bears are moving north, bringing them into contact with polar bears located on the coastline. Polar bears are spending more time on the land as Arctic ice diminishes, causing them to lose body weight and decline in numbers as they're unable to hunt for their favorite prey, such as seals. The combination of warmer temperatures and vegetation growth means there is more overlap between the species, and I'd expect that overlap to increase. We didn't see it much in the past, but we are now. The two species are very similar genetically, so males of both species will be attracted to females, which is why we are seeing a mix-up in the breeding. Polar bears evolved from brown bears about 150,000 years ago, and they're the largest land carnivores in the world at up to 1,600 pounds for a male. The bears known for the distinctive hump on their shoulders are normally grizzly bears, known for the distinctive hump on their shoulders, are normally solitary animals, but come together to feed or to mate. As temperatures continue to increase, the world has just broken a monthly heat record for 12 months in a row. So that's a pretty good trend. That tells us that trend's going to continue into the future. The long-term prognosis could be more favorable to this hybrid than to the polar bear itself. We're looking at the extraordinary change in the long term, where overlaps are increasingly increasing, and polar bears don't have a lot of options. That's pretty much what we'll expect. We're going to see more and more of these hybrid kinds of creatures as the environment changes, and different species have to move from one particular environment into another. They're going to encounter a local species, and if they're genetically close enough, they're going to mate and have little babies. The one that interests me the most is these hybrids of the wolf and the coyote, the coywolf. That started in a park in Canada, and these hybrids are now showing up in Maine, I think, mostly Maine, maybe New Hampshire, Vermont, the northeast part of the US. And in that case, they're showing the kind of intelligent survival skills of the coyote, but also they're not afraid of people. So they have less fear than the normal coyote would, that mix of wolf and coyote. And where they exist, they're beginning to take over territory from the coyotes, the local coyote populations. So these kinds of hybrids, I mean, we're just going to continually see more and more of them. Climate change, even the kinds of extreme climate change, I mean, record-setting months for 12 consecutive, record-setting heat for 12 consecutive months. The change could accelerate faster than what many people predict, maybe what the models predict, but it doesn't mean it's not bad for all species. You're seeing, I think it's blue crabs moving from warmer weather, warmer water temperature in the south, as that warmer water temperature moves north, the blue crabs move with it, and you're seeing them in Maine now. So blue crabs you get a good price for blue crab. So the Maine lobstermen, maybe the lobster population will go down, but the blue crab replaces it. So you just make an adjustment. It's this dislocation period going to create all kinds of problems, but we get past it, we prepare for it better, and we will deal with it. The only question is going to be, how long will it take us humans, to deal with the climate, change how we live, and adjust to that changing climate? The quicker we do it, the less pain and suffering we will have. Now we got another species that's changing into a new environment. And oops, let me make sure I got the right story. In this case, we're talking about the moose. Okay. Work the old screen share magic. All right. And that's our friend Mike Reed attaching a GPS device to a netted moose. They're using the helicopter to, I guess, put a net over the moose. You really don't want to get too close to a moose. They're pretty big animals. Excuse me for a second. All right. Need a drink of tea to wet my whistle. All right. Well, populations of moose have been declining in much of their northern American range. Research from the University of Saskatchewan, our friend Dale lives. Hopefully Dale's working on a couple of projects. When he gets finished with those projects, hopefully he can join us again in the Hangouts. Let's see. We got our friend Justin will not be able to make the Hangout. He's having some issues, some health issues. No, great. Justin, get better. So Justin won't be joining us. Get back to my little story. Here we go. 30 years ago, seeing moose in the farmland of Saskatchewan would have been very rare, but over time, they've expanded to these new areas. This is Ryan Brook, wildlife biologist with the Department of Animal and Poultry Science at the University of Saskatchewan. It's unique to see populations well established in areas with less than 1% forest cover that are dominated by crop productions. and he leads the Saskatchewan Farmland Moose Project. And they've discovered that the moose are succeeding at what used to be considered highly unsuitable habitat. They used a net gun from a helicopter to capture 40 adult cow moose and fit them with GPS collars in 2013 and 2014 to track the animals for a few years. They found the animals are taking advantage of the areas, the farmland areas, what they call knob and kettle landforms, rolling hills with plenty of tree ring, sloughs, and wetlands. During the heat of the day, hot for moose being about 14 degrees Celsius, the animals retreat to the shade and water, coming out to feed once it cools off. Unfortunately for farmers, what the moose are feeding on is often crops, particularly cereals, but also oil seeds such as canola. Crop damage is becoming a concern, particularly in the south part of Saskatchewan. Moose are also hazardous for drivers, and I can tell you that from being in Maine. And in Maine, on the main roads, you don't want to run into a moose. If you run into a moose, your car is going to be dead, and unfortunately, the moose might be. But some moose can actually walk away. You can completely damage the front of your car, and the moose will get off, shake it up, and walk it out. Back to the story. Moose are also hazardous for drivers, particularly in Saskatchewan, which has the largest municipal grid road network in Canada. Long legs, high center of gravity create a high risk of driving the main animal through the windshield. Oof. Since cows can weigh to 360 kilograms, bulls 700 kilograms, collisions can be catastrophic, both for the driver and the moose. There has not been any previous research on farmland moose, so a first step is to understand the ecology of the animals, to understand habitat selection. His team, Brooke and his team, they euthanized, they drugged the moose. The drugged moose are also doing well because farmland areas have few or no large predators, such as wolves or bears, to keep populations in check like they do in boreal forests. Low hunter pressure also contributes, but now in the province, they have instituted moose hunting season. Farmers can also protect their crops by fencing off areas. I don't know that a fence is going to stop a moose, and trying to deprive the moose of their daytime refuse. Well, you got climate change interactions creating problems for man and moose. But once again, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. Sometimes, and if we accept it, if we learn to adapt to the new species moving into an environment, I don't know how the farmers can do it. Don't have any magic formula for that. And let me stop and say, Mike Jobin has called it a night in the chat room, but Rorx is still hanging in there. Okay. Climate change, well, extreme climate change, just like I've said a little while ago. You adjust, you can deal with it. You don't adjust, you got big problems. Crops, the kind of crops that you grow. You got to adjust the kinds of crops that you grow to the farmland that's available, to the resources that are available, the water that's available. You do that, you can get along just fine. I had a story, more of a political story. Don't want to cover it by myself because it's the kind of thing I really wanted a discussion. But Justin can't make it because he's not feeling good. I don't know Pamela. Pamela was supposed to show up, but hasn't made an appearance. I'll try to make do myself. Hopefully I can entertain you with the story. And this is in the New York Times. I'll try to screen share. I didn't realize just how ridiculous things are in some parts of the United States as far as human rights, basic rights for every city in America. And UXFL has showed up in the chat room. Hi. So we got transgenders. Patrick corrected me a little bit when we were talking about this before. There's 700,000 transgender people in the United States. And there's obviously an increasing number. I don't know, this opposition is absolutely crazy for me. I'll read a couple of paragraphs from the story in the Times. I'll share the entire story in our show notes. We have this. This is A.J. Jackson, transgender student at Green Mountain Hill High School. Is barred from using the boys' bathroom, sparked a protest. I mean, give me a break. Okay. The way A.J. Jackson tells it, he keeps his head ducked down and pretended to fiddle with his cell phone as he walked into the boys' bathroom and headed for a stall. And this is at the Green Mountain High School area. And this is Vermont. I mean, you read about how, like in North Carolina, they're passing laws, trying to pass laws. Hopefully they'll get knocked down by the Supreme Court at some point. But this isn't just isolated to some parts of the United States. Here we're talking about Vermont. But the way some of his classmates see it, he's still Autumn Jackson, a girl in boys' clothing who had violated their inner sanctum. Oh, boo-hoo. While two boys were standing at a urinal, their private parts were exposed. Oh, man. It's like me going into the girls' room wearing a wig. So says Tanner Buschenberger or something like that. It's just plain weird. Well, boo-hoo, Tanner. That's ridiculous. I mean, if a lot of the people who look at transgender people, they see some weird person or whatever, if they knew what a transgender person goes through, they'd have a much greater appreciation of what it means to change your sex identity. And it's not really an option, I don't think. If you're a female in a boy's body, or a male in a female body, that's not a good situation. And what you have to go through with the hormone replacement, with the hormone therapy, body modification. I mean, here's a female who's transitioned to a male. Actually, the reverse is even more difficult. If you had a male transitioned to a female, they don't have a penis. Can't use the urinal. I don't know. It's beyond me. Okay. In any event, a complaint about Mr. Jackson using the boys' bathroom set off a protest by students advocating the right of their transgender classmates to use the bathroom of the choice. You've got a real divide here. On Thursday, the school's principal announced a new practice out the high school allowing transgender students to use the sex-specific bathroom of their choice rather than being encouraged to use a gender-neutral bathroom. Okay, hooray for the principal. And the announcement came a day before the Obama administration's national directive was announced. All right. But this week, there was a counter protest by students wearing T-shirts showing the male and female figures commonly used to label bathrooms saying straight pride. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're worried about your young girl or young boy, you're worried about somebody walking in there and maybe taking advantage of them, the person who's going to do that is a straight person. It's not going to be a transgender person. I read a story, I don't know, a week or so ago of the 700,000 transgender people now in the United States. Not a single case where one of them has been charged or arrested for a sexual offense. So they're the last people you need to worry about when it comes to, you're worried about the safety of your young boy or girl. Like much of the country, the rural school of 300 students in 7th through 12th grade, where everyone insists there are no cliques, is divided on the bathroom issue. Well, the teenagers here are carrying out a proxy cultural war of the parents across the country. Some still struggling to form opinions about what makes a society civil. They openly quote what they have heard from their parents about the merits and demerits of transgender bathrooms. And well, it's for a lot of people, they have the traditional viewpoint. And they're having to deal with more and more changes in our society. First, when in the 1960s, you had African Americans standing up for their rights, and you had women standing up for their rights. Then, more recently, you had gay people standing up for their rights. And now you've got transgender people standing up for their rights. Every citizen in the United States, you cannot discriminate against someone because of their race, their religion, or their sexual persuasion. Now, some of these people are saying sexual persuasion doesn't apply to transgenders. Maybe you got to twink the law a little bit, but it's not. I don't believe it's going to legally stand up if and when it gets to the Supreme Court. There was some kind of almost fisticuffs in the United States House of Representatives, I think today or yesterday. I didn't read the details of it. The legislature tried to pass a resolution, I presume, that would give rights to transgender people. The vote came out like 213 to 212. Some Republicans who said they were going to support the bill didn't. Just a mess. This is going to get settled ultimately by the Supreme Court, but at the local level, people are going to have to get used to changes. Things don't stay the same. And, I understand. You've got a lot of older people in my age bracket. Increasingly, they just don't like the way society is changing. They're kind of digging in their heels. But, that's just the way it is. It's better. Our society is becoming more diverse, it's getting better. There was another story I just saw, just read it before we started the Hangout, concerning Republicans. Republicans being ashamed of how many of their colleagues are trying to pass anti-Muslim laws, our friend Donald Trump. And you had, that's not in the lineup. Okay. You had, I'm going to go to Facebook. I got a group in Facebook where we talk lay politics. And it's an interesting, it's an instructive story. It's not all, let's see, I don't know. Okay, I guess I got a screen share. You think it's far from all Republicans who have this anti-Muslim attitude. And this is former Senator Bob Bennett. Last moments in a hospital bed. The three-term senator had a final wish, and he asked his wife and son, are there any Muslims in the hospital? I'd love to go to every single one of them to thank them for being in this country and apologize to them on behalf of the Republican Party for Donald Trump. Deathbed wish of a Republican senator from one of the nation's most conservative states highlights the complexity of politics and faith, juggling their complex identities, deciding which politicians to embrace. Okay, you've got other politicians. There's a couple of other. Come on. Here we go. This was from the Christian Science Monitor. Let's see, there's another guy. And this is a former senator from Arizona. Now, he was kicked out by the Tea Party. Jeff Flake. He and his family, they visited a mosque. We are a better country than it has been on display this week, he told the audience in the mosque. I'm convinced that the overwhelming majority of Muslims in the country, as well as those of Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhism, and other faiths and other traditions, hold to the American ideal and the constitutional tenet of freedom of religion. I don't know. I'm hoping that after this election, we'll start seeing, well, first of all, it depends who wins. Who wins and who controls Congress. Trump gets in, hey, we're all in trouble. The Muslims aren't going to be the only ones in trouble if Trump gets in. I just find that hard to believe. So we're going to have, maybe my friend Bernie can win. Maybe he can pull it out. Got my doubts. I support him. I voted for him in the primaries. He's got a real big hill to overcome. So, but it really looks like it's going to be the Trumps. And Hillary, our friend Hillary, has already said that her husband, Bill, the ex-president, is going to be in control of the economic policy of her administration. So we're talking about a team. Any event, Trump's get in, and we get a democratically controlled Congress, then we're going to see more specific laws reinforcing religious freedom, reinforcing the rights of all American citizens, including transgenders. Local communities, perhaps rural communities in some parts of the country, some places, some states like North Carolina, they're going to fight it, but in the long run, they're going to lose. I have confidence. I just hope it happens more frequently. Let's see. We got what? Let's see. We got a comment here. First, okay. Let me find the chat room. Where are you hiding, chat? I got a bazillion links up. Okay, Rorx. Rorx says, I think Bernie has to win like 88% of the remaining primaries to be able to win. Difficult predicament. Yeah, and the thing with the Democratic primaries, they're all proportional. Now they're open, which means independents can vote, and Bernie Sanders is going to get a lot of support from independents, but it's proportional. So as long as the Clintons get like 45% of the vote, maybe it's a 55-45 split, Sanders doesn't really gain that many delegates. That can't make up ground. So it's really, really going to be hard for him to make up ground. I think, we're going to get 4 more years of the Clintons at least. And since it's really hard to defeat an incumbent, you may be looking at 8 years of the Clinton family. They get a Democratic majority, okay. In many areas, that won't be too bad. Now I'm going to rant, and I've had this big discussion in our little Facebook group. Many of them are supporters of the Clintons. And excuse me, let me back up. Rorx, don't you find it ridiculous that each state runs their primaries differently? I absolutely agree. It's like there are just ways to prevent people from voting. Yeah, there's that too. But okay, now we got Bill Clinton. Okay, Bill Clinton's going to be running our economic policies of the Clinton administration. Ex-presidents should not be sitting in the Oval Office making decisions again. Absolutely shouldn't. I was leaning away from Clinton, only worried about, I didn't want Trump to win, but leaning away to a third party. As soon as I find out that this is the Clintons, we got an ex-president who's going to have a significant influence once again, that's it. I'm not voting for the Clintons. I'm probably going to vote for the Green Party and Jill Stein. Okay, in any event, our friend Bill Clinton. During his administration, you had some good economic news, in the short term. 2 things. The Glass-Steagall Act was repealed. What that meant was that banks could buy brokerage houses. Banks could get expand their business model. Get into more mortgages. Second thing that happened was they lowered the standards, the credit standards for a person applying for a mortgage loan. What that meant, a lot more people who previously couldn't qualify for a mortgage can now get that mortgage, which of course they can't afford. What happens, of course, they can't afford the mortgage. They go into bankruptcy. More and more bankruptcies. The real estate value plummets. Thank you, Bill Clinton, for that real estate crisis that we're still having today. I do not want this guy running our economic policies. Let me get a little more. Let's see. From Rorx in the chat room. There's been some talk about Bernie possibly running as a third-party candidate. I wonder what the odds of that happening. Early on, he said he wouldn't do that, but that was before his campaign got as popular as it is. He seems to be willing. He has said he's going to work to get Democratic congressional candidates elected. Can he do that if he goes third party? At this point, I don't think he can go third party. I don't. There's just not enough time left. I don't know. It might be a good idea. For one thing, it would mean that he might move more independents, some of whom might vote for Trump. They don't want to vote You know, they don't want to vote for the Clintons. They don't want to vote for the Clintons. Maybe they got no choice but to vote for Trump. Well, now Sanders goes third party. Now they don't have to vote for Trump. Maybe they vote for Bernie Sanders. That reduces Trump's following. It also might play out in congressional races. You have a third party independent is more likely to draw support from Republican candidates than it is for Democratic candidates. So that could also work out as well. I don't know. Was I going to rant some more? I don't think so. Moving on. I only got a couple of more stories to talk about. Pretty interesting ones. Oh, here we got another message from Rorx in the chat room. Okay. I think it's possible, since he's going to be in it until the end, that he started a movement. Well, he has started a movement, that's for sure. A movement among independents, more and more independents. Many of his supporters have stated they will not vote for Clinton, which is, that's certainly very true. I wonder if with this election, after the election is over, Hillary Clinton and her husband, they're going to be presidents. I don't know. Who's going to control Congress? That's going to be close. But it's obvious that the number of independents are growing. It's obvious that we've had a two-party system, and these two parties are losing support. More and more independents. There's more independents than there are in either the Democratic or the Republican Party. And we might very well see a drift away from a two-party system into a 3, 4, who knows, 5-party system, a multi-party system. More like the kinds of situation you see in some of the parliamentary systems in Europe. I don't know if that would be a good thing or a bad thing. All systems of government evolve. I mean, that's just natural evolution. Evolution in ecosystems, evolution in species, evolution in political systems. From kings to, from gods to kings to monarchs, and colonialism. And now we've gone capitalism. We've got socialism, communism. So all of these systems are evolving. And we have another user has joined the group. User 0000. 0000, hello. I think it's almost inevitable at this point. We will go to at least a third-party system. The Republicans and the Democrats are just not getting the job done, in my opinion. The Democratic Party still has a reasonably large umbrella for conservatives, middle of the road, liberals. Republicans, man, they're really getting split ever since the Tea Party showed up. So you're getting now, the conservatives. Man, you got Trump, you got Ted Cruz. Even Paul Ryan is a pretty right-wing conservative. And he's the guy they talk about maybe will become something more of a leader. But he really is a pretty right-wing conservative. So the Republican Party, they got a tough road. Could an independent, how well could an independent get their programs through Congress? One advantage of a two-party system is you can have programs. The Democrats get together, they unite behind a particular program, they get organized, and they can more easily implement that particular agenda and program. You have a situation where you have an independent in the White House. They've got to get support from a larger group of politicians. It might be harder to organize the kind of support you need to get a program passed. I don't know. In other countries with third parties, I guess I don't know. Offhand, I can't think of a country that's got three parties that's really, really doing pretty well. Well, you got in the Scandinavian countries, you've got the Green parties, you got conservatives and liberals, and they're doing pretty good. They're doing pretty good because they get a lot of money from oil. So I don't know. They're doing pretty good. Yanni's Finland, our Minion Yanni. Finland's doing very well for itself, and I think they've got a parliamentary system with three parties, more than two. So, okay, it could work out. It could work out. It's a transition, and I'll tell you what, if the Clintons don't really get their act together, or we got a split Congress, and we get the kind of inaction, not adequate action we're seeing out of our current government, we're definitely going to a third-party system. All right, we have more. That's what our friend Roxy says. Rorx, sorry. Maybe it's easier as they're not affiliated. I can read it better here. Maybe it's easier as they're not affiliated with any of the major parties. It would be interesting because there's no historical precedent to compare it to. We've never really had a really successful third-party candidate. Many through the years, we had Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt declined to run. He supported his successor, Taft. Then Teddy Roosevelt didn't like what Taft was doing, so he created the Bull Moose Party. Didn't win. Didn't do too good. The most recent one, we had Ross Perot. He had a fair amount of support, but he really didn't win too many electoral votes. He got votes. I forget exactly how many, what percentage he got. It might have been as much as 25%. But he was never going to get the electoral votes to win the presidency. And he didn't really have any kind of a strong party structure. So, and he had his own money, pretty much like Trump. And so you don't hear from him anymore. Sanders got a lot of support. 10 million, is it 10 million votes to 12 million for Clinton, for Hillary, for the Clintons. So it isn't like the Clintons are winning by a large majority. They just started out with such a tremendous advantage. They had the party leadership behind them. They had the president behind them. I think it's pretty remarkable that with all the leadership and the president and everything else against him for his rivals, that he was able to get 10 million people to vote for him. That's a remarkable success for a guy like Sanders. And, it really shows how well an independent can do. Check the chat area. Ross really ended up helping Clinton. Took votes away from 41. Who the heck did Clinton run against? I don't remember. But yes, Rorx is correct. He took votes. He took votes away from whoever the heck Clinton was running against, and it helped Clinton get in. Excuse me. Interesting times we live in. Excuse me. Don't want to see and hear the old man blowing his nose. Okay. Let's see. Rorx liked Ross. He actually spent his own money to buy primetime TV to educate the public about issues. Yes, he did. We're getting more talk about issues, a little more talk about issues. Turned out to be right about NAFTA. Ended up getting that sucking sound. Yeah. And I think Sanders, if you just talked about issues, and if you had a traditional Republican, traditional Democrat, Sanders-led third party, he didn't really have a shot in that case. Okay. I'm going to talk about a couple of more science stories. You guys in the chat room keep talking. I'll pop in, join your discussions. Okay. This one we can rant a little bit about our friend antibiotics, or not our friend, in some cases, antibiotics. Let me go to the screen share. Antibiotics that kill gut bacteria also stop the growth of new brain cells. Yikes. This is a mouse study, though. Rorx is reminding it was George Bush? Yes, George Bush. Okay. That's sorry, ranting again. George Bush should never have been allowed to run for president because his father was president. New resolution, new amendment to the Constitution. No child, no spouse or child of a president should be allowed to run for president. Probably no grandkids of a president should be allowed to run for the presidency. They've got that political machine behind them and way too much of an advantage. Okay. I'm going to talk about something a lot more pleasant, talking about how antibiotics can kill off brain cells. Yay. Yeah, let me sip my tea. Okay. Antibiotics, strong enough to kill off gut bacteria, can also stop the growth of brain cells in the hippocampus, section of the brain associated with memory. This is reported in a mouse study. And Susan Wolf of the Max Delbrück, or something like that, Center for Molecular Medicine in Berlin, Germany. The researchers also uncovered a clue as to why. A type of white blood cell seems to act as a communicator between the brain, the immune system, and the gut. We found prolonged antibiotic treatment might impact brain function. Now, they say both probiotics and exercise can balance brain plasticity and should be considered as a real treatment option. So you take the antibiotics because, there's some things people in my age bracket, urinary tract infections are common. So maybe you have to take the antibiotics, but then after that, you go to probiotics and exercise. In the new study, the researchers gave a group of mice enough antibiotics for them to become nearly free of intestinal microbes compared to untreated mice. The mice who lost their gut bacteria performed worse in memory tests and showed a loss of neurogenesis, new brain cells, in a section of their hippocampus that typically produced new brain cells throughout the individual's lifetime. At the same time that the mice experienced memory and neurogenesis loss, the research team detected a lower level of white blood cells marked with LY6CHI in the brain, blood, and bone marrow. So researchers tested whether it was indeed this LY6CHI monocytis, behind the changes in the neurogenesis and memory. Okay. In another experiment, the team compared untreated mice to the mice that had healthy gut bacteria levels, but low levels of LY6CHI, either due to genetics or due to treatment with antibiotics. In both cases, mice with this low LY6CHI levels showed the same memory and neurogenesis defects as mice in the other experiment who had lost gut bacteria. Furthermore, if the researchers replaced this LY6CHI levels in mice treated with antibiotics, then memory and neurogenesis improved. Luckily, the adverse side effects of the antibiotics could be reversed. Mice who received probiotics who were exercised on a wheel after receiving antibiotics regained memory and neurogenesis. The magnitude of the action of probiotics on this LY6CHI cells, neurogenesis, and cognition, and it impressed me. But one result in the experiment raised more questions about the gut's bacteria and the link between this LY6CHI and the brain. While probiotics helped the mice regain memory, fecal transplants to restore a healthy gut bacteria had no effect. And fecal transplants are becoming a very popular way of trying to replenish, get healthy gut bacteria back into the gut. There we go. With any, we're learning, this study shows, we're learning more and more about how the body works, individual body works. Our gut bacteria, individualized for each of us. As we learn, when you're being treated for anything with any kind of medication, if we can personalize it so that it's specific to the needs of your own body, that's going to be a tremendous improvement. It's going to greatly reduce the side effects in many cases that we see now. This is a mouse study. It has to be it has to be duplicated. But if it happens that there is a connection, and that a side effect of the antibiotics is a reduction in brain cell growth. new brain cells, then that's not so good. I really like the idea of personalized medicine, and I think that's what we got to go to. There's no such thing as one size medication fits all equally. You've got to individualize our treatments. Thinking of many of my older friends, most of them are on some kind of medication. All of them has side effects. So what's happening is you're being you have an illness, whatever it happens to be, high blood pressure. Go to your doctor prescribes some particular medication, and what they're doing is they're experimenting. Don't know. You take the medication, it don't kill you, I guess it must be okay. And that's what it is. It's roulette. It's medical roulette at this point. It really, really helps in many cases. The medication helps. For instance, treating arthritis. I forget the medication you take for arthritis. So there are people who years ago wouldn't be walking. Now, because of this medication, they can walk. So medication is very helpful, very useful. But it's all got side effects. And we got to understand better how the body, each of our own bodies work, so that we can personalize our medication. And we're doing that. Okay. All right. Let's see. Didn't want to skip over the story I wanted to talk about. Got to make sure I got the right one here, guys. No, not the penis transplant. Not one, not that one. Plants, more plants. No, don't want plants. People. Yeah, son of a gun. Here we go. Okay. And this is a study. I wouldn't call it a definitive study. It's got to be replicated. But in this study, redefining health and well-being in aging. It's a new look, a new way of looking at how to judge the health and well-being of us older folks. Okay. We got graphs and charts in here. I'm going to jump to that part. All right. Chronological age itself plays almost no role in accounting for differences in older people's health and well-being. And this is a large-scale study at the University of Chicago. It's part of the National Social Life, Health, and Aging Project by the National Institute on Aging of the National Institute of Health. Now, it's a major longitudinal survey of a representative sample, they claim, of 3,000 people aged 57 to 85, done by an independent research organization. So I'm not going to take this as gospel. It needs to be, we need to make sure the results are accurate. Other people have to look at this. Other people have to examine it. But it's interesting. And we can see some of the conclusions they came to, which is cancer by itself is not related to other conditions that undermine health. So if you focus on just cancer, if you focus on the disease and not other aspects of the individual's health, you're going to have the wrong focus. Another important thing, poor mental health, which affects 1 in 8 older adults, undermines health in ways not previously recognized. That just means more research needs to be done. A new approach, really, again, I guess, I don't know, holistic approach, looking at the whole body and not just looking at one particular illness and one particular disease, be it cancer or I don't know what you can do about Alzheimer's, but you've got to take a more holistic approach to evaluating older adults' well-being. Here's an interesting one. Obesity seems to pose little risk to older adults with excellent physical and mental health. So the fact you have an individual whose, their body mass or whatever qualifies for being obese, immaterial with older people. You got to look at other things, heart rate, their mental, do they have these mental conditions? Once again, you can't just look at obesity, say obesity is bad. It's immaterial. That's immaterial when you're looking at an older adult who has excellent mental and physical health otherwise. Here's an interesting one. Excuse me, starting to lose the voice a little. Sensory function and social participation play critical roles in sustaining or, there's the big "or," undermining health. Now, I was talking about that. I had a chat with our friend Pamela Taylor about that. Maybe it was last week. In any event, where I'm just not a sociable person. And I like my personal space. And most of my life, people keep saying you got to get out. Okay, I have got out. Well, mostly for the drugs and the sex, but we won't talk about that. But, they say, you got to get out. You got to meet more people. You got to go, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't got to do that. So if I try from peer pressure, permanent peer pressure, if I try to become more sociable like everybody else, I'm under stress. It creates stress problems, and that's not good. Stress is not good. So, I'm going to decide how I want to socialize. Maybe I just want to do it in Hangouts. Maybe I just want to do it, on the Facebook or the Twitter or whoever. Now I'm going to get out of the house. I'm going to say, oh, no, neighbor, whatever. But I'm not going to do a lot of socializing. I apologize. I got nieces. Okay, the only people in my family left are nieces, and they're always saying, come on over, somebody's birthday party or somebody's whatever. And I probably should do that, but I don't want to. And I'm 72, soon to be 73, and if I don't want to go to a freaking birthday party, I ain't going. Last week, Pamela, maybe it was last week. In any event, Pamela talks about the fact she's now in a place where she's sharing living space. She has her own, I think, bedroom or something with 3 other people. No privacy. She likes her personal space. I like my personal space. So if you try, if you might have some older person. I'm in some old folks home or something. And I saw this with my stepmother. They wheel you into the room so you can use noisemakers or whatever. You know what? I don't want that. I want to wheel me into the old porch or something so I can stay by myself, my old grumpy old man me. So, social interaction by itself is not a good thing. Know the person. Once again, you can't just look at cancer. You just can't look at mental health and obesity. You just can't look at whether or not a person is socially active or not. You got to know the person. Rorx says, guess the drugs and the sex didn't live up to all the hype. Well, they did to a point. They did to a point. Well, the point is when the drugs start interfering with the sex, it ain't such a good thing. But I'm not going to bore you with that. Another interesting thing here. Having broken a bone since age 45 is a major marker for future health issues in people's lives. Now, I probably, what bone are we talking about? What I can say, absolutely. Older people in my age bracket or older, the hip. The hip gets broken, mobility drops down, and it has a dramatic impact, a dramatic reduction in quality of life. You really do have to slow down and be more careful when you get older. And I guess a broken bone after the age of 45 might be some kind of an indication of maybe bone strength problems. And it's going to decrease over time. So that's a marker. And it's a marker that this person's bones are not as strong as someone else's. And man, you really, really got to be healthy when you get older. During winter, when you're walking on ice, man, you got to be careful when you're walking on ice. So that's something that's really important, something you need to know about, and that I can confirm. So if you have somebody who's had a broken bone after the age of 45, they really, really got to be careful about bone health issues. Another one. Older men and women have different patterns of health and well-being during aging. Yes, and that, once again, we're getting to that personalized issue. What's good for men may not be good for women. They may be, they may not be. It comes down to the individual. I will go so far as to say, whether it's a man or a woman, the important thing is the individual. What is the pattern? What is the overall pattern? And that's another reason why it helps if you have one doctor who's been treating you for a long period of time. That doctor is getting to know you. Increasingly, as people move around, that becomes less and less the case. I for most of my life, I had one doctor treating me that treated my entire family. So he knew, some things to watch out for that could run in the family. What's healthy, defining what's healthy is different between men and women, and it's different from each one of us. And the last one is absolutely right on target. Mobility is one of the best markers of well-being, and it absolutely is. I know some people with limited mobility, they get along fine. Those people tend to be people with very positive attitudes. And that's what you need. But there are a lot of people who don't have that positive attitude. And particularly if it's a change, where you're able to walk on your own and get around on your own. And all of a sudden you're confined to a wheelchair. Well, wheelchairs are getting better, but for older people, it's a big difference, seen as a big loss in their mobility, and that absolutely is a marker of well-being. When you have someone, an older person, broke their hip, man, that's someone you've really got to pay attention to. And it's more psychological, probably, than physical. Yeah, Patrick is gone. Patrick went to bed. Sorry, Patrick. We had I don't know. I cannot, from that, I cannot make any guess at when our hangout is supposed to start. We were supposed to start, I thought, 10 o'clock. We normally start later, 11, 12. Patrick said he could, come into the hangout if we started earlier because he's got to get to sleep because he works. Okay. Our friend Pamela thought Pamela was going to show up 10 o'clock. Didn't happen. 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock, 11:30. So I finally started the hangout. And Patrick, I thank you for hanging in there. I also thank you, Michael Jobin, who's also hung in there, and anybody else in the chat room who hung in there as well. Sorry if you're listening. I just don't have any idea when someone's going to show up in the hangout. I just don't know. Let me see. Did I ever get a message? No, never got a message from Pamela. No, I just, Okay, well, I mean, Pamela does. I mean, she's got Chelsea. Something could easily have come up. She's very busy. I know she was working on a law school paper. So, okay, so she's probably just things just didn't work out. All right. What do we got left here? I got 2 stories left. Okay. Do we want to talk about penal transplants or better crops? All right. I'm just throwing it here and there. It's a story that's made the headlines. Probably anybody watching this has already read something about it. Penal transplant. And it's a year ago at least, we had a story on a guy who had a transplant. Might have been in China. He had problems. And we almost kind of make a little bit of a joke out of it. But this story shows you, number one, there are a lot of people. You get cancer, and you have to amputate a person's penis, man's penis. And that's a problem. And this kind of operation, it helped an individual. He was in the military in this particular case, and it can really help them with the quality of life getting a transplant that works. And I think what we're talking about right now is just things like, say, for instance, you can urinate. You don't have to have a catheter. That can make a big difference for a lot of people. Okay. I think there's a picture. There's a picture of the guy. If I can screen share it. Okay. Now, a team of researchers at Massachusetts General Hospital announced they have performed the U.S. nation's first genitourinary reconstructive transplant. Penal transplant. A lot easier to say that. The 15-hour operation took place about a month ago, involved surgically grafting the complex microscopic vascular and neural structure of a donor organ onto the comparable structures of the transplant. That's amazing. You know how many nerve endings and things there are? That's just mind-boggling surgery. Now, the patient in this particular case, and you can see him, Thomas Manning, continues to recover well, with blood flow established to the donor organ and no signs of bleeding, rejection, or infection. While the patient is still early in the post-surgical healing process, he says his physicians are cautiously optimistic he will regain function that he lost in 2012 when a diagnosis of penile cancer led him to undergo This, they call it a penectomy, partial penectomy, ugh, or amputation of the penis. Ugh. Oh, well. Well, again, this is, until we find better cures for cancer, there are going to be more people also in the military because of, warfare problems. You're gonna have more people like this. All right, here we go. It's called a genitourinary vascularized composite allograft transplant. Developed key strategic surgical approaches aimed at helping people with this devastating injury. According to the surgeons, the three major goals of the transplants are to reconstruct external genitalia to a more natural appearance, which appears to be successful, reestablishing urinary function, and potentially achieve sexual function. That's going to be, oh man, that's going to be the really more difficult, I think, recovery option. Okay, in a statement, the patient expressed the desire to tell his story to help others who may benefit from this type of procedure. Today, I begin a new chapter filled with personal hope and hope for others who have suffered genital injuries, particularly for our service members who have put their lives on the line and suffered serious damage as a result. I'm sharing this success with you. It's my hope we can usher in a bright new future. And he also thanked his family, his medical team, and extended sympathies and gratitude to the generous family of the donor who gave him the chance to improve quality of life. Wow. That's an example. When you talk about reconstructive surgery, penis anywhere, all those nerve endings that you got to reattach, it's just mind-boggling that they have to do it. Just being able to get rid of a catheter so that you can urinate out of your penis, that's big. You feel like a normal person. You go to the urinal. You got to worry about them transgenders, but that's really improvement in life. Now, if you can sexual function, well, if you get the nerve endings connected, you have a blood flow problem. What's going to cause an erection is getting blood flow to the penis. You got to do something about that. Okay. You could always use, if that's a real problem you can't overcome, I guess you can use marital aids or whatever. So, that's another big plus because you can live without sex. I know people in my age bracket, they're not particularly concerned with having an active sex life. I know married couples have separate bedrooms. Perfectly happy. That's romantic love. Having healthy sex, however, I think for most people really helps your quality of life. If you are unable to get sexual gratification, I'm thinking of people who have had their prostate removed. That can have a big impact. I know some people, they've had their prostate removed, and they talk about, it's not a problem with their wife. Okay, there's always oral sex and a marital aid, and they say, I know one person says that, they don't, You can learn to live with it. You can learn to live with everything. But if you can have something that will restore sexual function, absolutely. Yeah, 60, 70, 80, whatever. That's going to really also improve your quality of life. Absolutely. Okay. Let me check the chat room. Where is my chat room? I got a bazillion links. Once again, got to close some links. Wait a second here while I close my links and get into the chat area. Okay. Thank you, Rorx. Rorx says I'm doing a good job on my own. Okay, thank you, Rorx. All right, got my last story here. Beginning to lose my voice, so I'm going to make this the last story. And the story leads into another little rant of mine. Observation. And we're talking about the creation of supercrops. Screen share. This is an article in Nature magazine. Okay. It's a long article. I'm only going to read a couple of paragraphs. The entire article will be in the show notes. We're talking about an individual by the name of Jonathan Lynch. And he likes to look beneath the surface in his quest to breed better crops. The plant physiologist, plant physiologist, spends a lot of time digging up roots to work out what makes some varieties extremely good at extracting nutrients from the ground. And he wants to use his knowledge to develop plants and extra efficient roots. Last year, this research paid off. Him and his team at Pennsylvania State University reported they had produced a variety of common bean or string bean with a combination of root traits that allows it to take up phosphorus from the soil with improved efficiency. In experimental plots, the plants produced 3 times the bean type of typical varieties. And this raises hopes in Africa, where common beans are one of the most important sources of protein for poor people. Mozambique is testing Lynch's beans in their country, and Lynch expects to win regulatory approval to bring the crop to market by next year. His beans are among the first successful attempts in a global race to develop crops that grow well in soils depleted of nutrients. Low availability of nitrogen, phosphorus, and water are the main limitations of plant growth. And given climate change, many areas of the world desperately need this kind of technology. Now, his work stands out because it's an old school approach. And it says, we're leading a renaissance in some conventional crop breeding techniques that rely on laboriously examining plants' physical characteristics and then selecting for desirable traits such as growth or the length of fine roots. Surprisingly, this approach seems to be outpacing, in this instance, high-tech root. You've got big corporations such as DuPont has spent more than a decade developing improved crops through genetic engineering, and some companies say that their transgenic varieties looks promising in field trials, but they are still no fertilizer frugal transgender crops on the market. Skipping ahead, is phosphorus discoveries have already jumped into farmers' fields in China. Colleagues have shown that some of the root traits that boost common beans also improve growth in soybeans. The regulatory system in China is faster at approving new crop varieties than that of Mozambique, probably went in the United States. So the improved Soybeans are already in use and have been planted in more than 1 million hectares so far. Well, earlier I had talked about how if we adapt to what's happening, what climate change is doing to our ecosystem, we can do just fine. And this is an example where you can create a plant that can be successful in a changed environment. That's what and that shows that you can produce plants that will be successful in a changing environment for places like, Mozambique, or heck, any place that's getting drought areas, maybe even California. And it also shows, and I talked about this earlier, that population growth itself does not have to mean the end of civilization. We can, through technology, through the work being done by people like Lynch, we can produce enough food to feed even a doubling or tripling, in my opinion, population. We can produce plenty of food to feed people. With technology, we can produce enough energy. Everybody goes to solar panels. Everybody's got a solar panel on their farm or in their house. Technology can give everybody everywhere plenty of energy, plenty of food. The problem is the distribution system. Some areas, no problem. Other areas that don't have access to the new improved technology, the new improved plants, big problems. So it isn't that we are incapable of producing enough food to feed ourselves. It's that we're not getting the food and the resources to the right places, the places that need it the most. So I'm optimistic 10, 20 years down the road, we will have problems, a disruption until this technology gets to market, till we do a better job of changing our lifestyles, changing how we grow stuff. And in some parts of the world, like desert country in Africa, starvation, I don't know. It's really going to be serious problems. And there's another example. While we need to think of ourselves as citizens of the world, you get a place, you get resource problems, it's going to lead to war. War's not good for any of us. So it's in our own best interest, the United States, to help people in other countries. And you know what? That doesn't mean sending a drone and blowing up their house. That's not necessarily going to help people. It's better if we can, it's in our own self-interest to help the people in other countries like the Middle East. If we can help them, we're going to show that we are compassionate, more friendly people. And you know what? We're not going to get targeted. And that's the same message everybody needs to get across. We're citizens of the world. You have this idea, this Republican idea. It's the Republicans are when they're talking about it. Maybe some Democrats think it as well, that the United States, some exceptional country. We're this great country that's going to lead the rest of the world into whatever. No, that is not true. We put up these little walls and barriers and around us. That's only going to lead to more and more conflicts on our part and other part of other countries. That's going to increase the number of terrorists that target us. But we think of ourselves as a part of the world, and we're citizens of the world. That's going to lead to a world where we're much better at solving problems. Okay. Voice going, guys. I hung in there as long as I could. Hopefully, I passed on some good information. Hopefully, I even entertained you. But I'm now going to end the broadcast. I will have another Hangout next week. Got no clue when it's going to go live. The best place, all I can say is, one, you can go to the channel when it's recorded. It's being recorded. It'll show up in my YouTube channel. I'll put links in my YouTube channel. Maybe you can subscribe to them. And all of the social media and Facebook. Well, I don't use Twitter, but it'll be in Facebook. It'll be in Google Plus. It'll be on YouTube. You'll have access to it so that you can watch the recorded video at your leisure. Some of the people, yes, the chat room. There are people in the chat room who will also join me. Thank you, chat room guys. You really help out in nights like this. So I don't know. I can't tell you when this Hangout will be on again next Thursday night. Man, I hope there's going to be some other minions joining me so we can get into some really interesting discussions. Who the heck knows? I don't know. Maybe it'll be on 10 o'clock. Maybe it'll start on 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Maybe it'll start at 1 o'clock. I got no clue. And anyway, in any event, good night, and I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.